This place sure is crawling with celebrities. I'm the only person here I never heard of.
Innovation Labcasters, the moment you've been waiting for. A game of 21 questions goes full circle, and there's no escaping it. We saved the best one for last here on episode 5. This time, Ben Scragg and myself prepped questions for fellow co-host Angela Gunder to unpack. I knew we'd get some amazing responses, but I had no idea what we were in for. You're in for a treat. 21 questions with Angela Gunder. Here it is.
Well, hello.
What is happening? What is going on?
Without fail, Angela Gunder.
Oh, I'm so excited about that. Ben, are you so excited about tonight?
Kinda, if I can get my mic to work. I literally could. I just kept on and off. I literally could not be more excited about tonight.
Oh, God.
Not figuratively. I literally could not be.
So, real talk before the real talk. I have been simultaneously excited and terrified for this evening. And I spent the whole day preparing by floating around in my pool, drinking tequila, broken up by some light weeding. That's what we're going to call it. I only pulled up the weeds that didn't look like real plants. That was my my weeding plan for today.
I feel like that's a safe bet.
But now I'm here with you guys.
So, we have 23 questions again because it went from 21 to 23 and we couldn't go back to 21.
Well, we didn't, if you recall, we didn't give you 23, Dave.
Oh.
We actually, I think we even held back like a bunch of them. Ben, did you ever do the count? I feel like we gave Dave like 18 questions.
I really was lenient on that. And I think there was one where I actually got worried and held you to the count. And there were a lot of them that went inordinately long. So, Dave, I'm actually going to keep a silent counter here, and I'm just going to observe the morality play that you make tonight.
I'm holding my head.
So before we get to the 23 questions, we got to ask, what's everyone drinking?
I am drinking, well, let's see if Ben can figure it out.
No.
Give me one more. Lot of water in there, or ice down thoroughly. Ooh, you having an old fashioned?
It's all water. It's just
it sounded all water, but I didn't want to believe it.
No, but the rest of the day, it was margarita. We have this sort of strange thing in Tucson called an EG, which is if Subway were better and also served Slurpees, but the Slurpees had fresh fruit in them, and then they had cookies of the month. That is EGs. So we got EGs for lunch, but I didn't actually have a sandwich or I had 6 French fries and a pina colada slushy of sorts that ended up having tequila in it as well, because that is a lunch of champions. So now it's water.
Well done. I am having a Ramazotti, Amaro. I had dinner with some long lost buddies tonight, where we recounted some old times and also just hung out because we see each other a lot. So there's that. And there may have been margaritas, and tacos with wheat lacoche and
shush,
and a little bit of pork belly. And so now.
That's real fancy.
Yes, it is. And to tame the tummy back down, just a little Amaro.
So I have a question. Do you think that it is crazy that restaurants charge all this money for wheat lecoche when it is straight up corn fungus?
Yes, because it is, and I see what you did there, and this is not the game we're playing tonight. But yes, I think it's like anything that is a little bit unusual or a little bit rare that happens.
Like hanger steak. There's only one on a cow, so now they have to charge us up the butt for it.
Indeed. Indeed.
Tonight I am drinking Red's Wicked Mango.
Whoa. I don't even know about that.
Refreshingly hard ale, they say. 8% alcohol volume.
I approve.
Red's Wicked. Mango flavor. I've never had mango flavor.
How is it?
It's a little sweet for my taste, but it is refreshing, I must say. So, I'm so excited about tonight. Let's start with a good, concise question. Kick things off. Angela, tell us a little bit about yourself. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Can I answer that question with a question?
Yes.
Approximately what age?
Wow. Let's say anything you wanted to be before you graduated from high school. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's legit. So, gosh, if we want to take it super young, I wanted to be, and I used to say zoologist, and my uncle, who is a scientist, he's actually my great uncle, used to correct me and say it's a zoologist and it has nothing to do with zoos, because that was the tough educational love that I received in my family. But for a long time, I wanted to be a vet, actually. I thought that was something that I would be interested in doing. And then when I got more into the bio stuff, I thought geneticist would be pretty cool. I don't really know what I would have ended up doing as a geneticist, which is kind of crazy. Like you formulate these ideas in your head, and then life kind of shakes them up like a oh shit, what are those things?
Like a bag of popcorn?
Like a bag of popcorn, like a bag of nails. I don't know. Like a bag of sand. And then I meant to say a snow globe, and you shake it up like a snow globe, and then it takes a really long time for all of that mess to settle. And then you're like, oh, okay, that was not really what I was going for. So yeah, final answer, veterinarian.
Solid.
How was I on time?
I lied about keeping time. I'm not.
It felt right, though. It felt good.
It felt good. The spirit said it felt right. So I know that despite our digital age tendencies and proclivities, you kind of like to keep a low profile on social media. And so my question is, what's up with that?
So actually, before this whole shebang tonight, I was like, shit, they're gonna try to web scrub me, and there's not gonna be much there, and it's gonna be kind of an interesting setup for this whole evening. I used to be, and I say this most affectionately, a social media slut. And I felt like I needed to come to Jesus and sort of figure out my relationship with social media. So I have been, and I talk about it openly, I have been legally separated from Facebook for, I want to say, I don't know, 6 years or so. And I am a lazy Twitterer. I am most prominently on Instagram, because I think that the idea of telling stories and photos makes my brain happy. But really and truly what it is that I don't like the universe being able to take all of my stories and recraft them and repurpose them into other formats that are not really what I'm trying to say, for what I consider to be nefarious reasons. And I took a shot for that, certainly with the connection to other people that I have. I long for that in some ways, but for the most part, I felt better about my life for being less crazy on social media.
I think we're done here.
That was not. It wasn't that eloquent, but I mean,
no, in a good way. Yeah,
it's the truth. You know.
No.
Go ahead.
No, we totally have to have an episode all about this world of our online personas in general. That
it was like the last episode where Dave, actually Ben asked the question about you building a swing set and you being a fantastic parent, and you turned it into a conversation about how we are portrayed over social media, either correctly or incorrectly, which I found fascinating as hell. Rather than take the compliment, it was more of, oh, well, social media paints a picture that's not necessarily wholly accurate. And I don't even mind that it's not totally in my control. I mind that it is in the control of like billionaires that are profiting off of me, because if I'm not paying for the commodity, then I am the commodity. And that was my issue. I didn't want to fund somebody else getting rich off of, what I cook in the kitchen and take pictures of, or the trips that I go on, or me making stupid fucking faces, which I do a whole lot when people take pictures.
Angela, I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit. I'd like to know a little bit more about your family and like traditions that have been passed down, and like any classic family stories, jokes, songs.
In a minute.
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
like your favorite family tradition, let's say.
Oh, fuck you guys. We have a lot. Some of them are pretty simple. Like, if my sister and I, if one or the other of us is picking the other one up at the airport, we show up with a sign that says, Muff Danderfield on it, because, we were doing an IMDb search one day and found this actress whose name was Charlotta Muff Danderfield. And actually the funny part is that that's not even the real name. That's just how we remembered it. But some are certainly more complicated than that. I'll give you one. Around Christmas for many years, our family, we would just get so busy and kind of lazy and joke around a whole lot about phoning shit in, and we're all Catholic, but we do kind of things unconventionally. So we had a year where we didn't get around to getting a Christmas tree until the last minute. And in fact, our neighbor came over with all of these pine branches to help us build a Christmas tree, because she felt bad that we didn't have a Christmas tree up yet, even though we had intentionally not gotten a Christmas tree. And we also had a 20-foot pine tree in our backyard. So it was kind of stupid to bring over pine branches, but whatever. So we decided that we were going to do it on our terms. So we bought a fake tree, and we said, okay, well, the tree kind of needs to be a little bit more real. So we decorated it with car air fresheners that first year. That was a bad decision if you want your house to smell good. But the year after that, we kind of tried to one-up ourselves year after year. So we did scratch-off tickets one year, which we lost a lot of money on that, but we got to scratch them all off on Christmas Day. And then we did chili peppers and birds another year. It was real stupid. So we haven't done that in a while. We need to relive that tradition. I can come up with some better stuff, but yeah, that's my family.
I'm liking your family already. I think when Ben and his family and me and my family come down and visit in the winter, I'd like to say hello to that group.
Yeah.
You should. Now, definitely the way to see the Franklin family is in the summertime, in the backyard. We all are big fans of blue crabs, so we put out picnic tables in the back and with newspaper and put just tons and tons and tons of seafood and pitchers of beer, and we kind of like go crazy on this crab massacre. And then my dad usually has a guitar nearby to play some ridiculous music from the 1920s and 30s.
That's going on the agenda.
I'm about that. So I'm going to jump out of order. Speaking of grabbing a guitar and playing some music, top 5 songs in your life right now. Go.
I knew that this was going to come. Can I cheat like you did, Ben, and break open my Belvita breakfast biscuits equivalent?
You can,
Okay.
with the 30 seconds you have left.
Fuck.
I'm kidding.
Okay, so on my Spotify, I break things out in different lists, and all the pretty things is usually the list that keeps me the most happy. So for some reason, songs don't last that long for me. Like I kind of go, I'm very OCD, and I kind of go in waves where songs come and then they fade out. So surprisingly, since I got this new job in Tucson, which has been like almost 2 years now, which is banana cakes to say, Little Dragon Clap Clap has been my lady jam, and the music video is even trippier. It's like a Santeria raising zombies from the dead sort of thing. I really like the Moth and the Flame, Sorry, right now. I'm thinking about my gym playlist because those are usually the songs that I go crazy over. Asher Roth, Dude. Shit, this is real hard. I feel like I'm gonna forget one of my children in this list. Sylvan S.O.B. is another one that I like kind of lose my mind over. Mm-hmm. And Shiza Boo Boo.
Hey, you've listed some good ones, and we've always got the show notes.
I know. I need to give you a 5th because you asked me to do something.
Oh yeah.
God damn it. Schoolboy Q, Collard Greens. I don't know what it is about that song. I just, yeah.
It's a good list.
Yeah, it's all over the place. Somebody was forgotten, but that's the way it goes.
Someone we can't forget is our wonderful presidential nominee, Donald Trump.
Oh, fucking A.
And if, if Ben's dreams come true and Donald Trump gets elected and decides to throw all of the literature of the world into an evil burning furnace of hatred, but you, Angela, were allowed to keep one book, what book would that be?
For myself or for all of humanity?
For yourself.
Okay. I think I would probably want to keep... This is so hard. Okay, but I guess you should go with your gut, right? Like, what's the first thing that pops in your mind when somebody asks you that question? And for me, it was Chuck Palahniuk, Invisible Monsters, because I adore that book so deeply and resoundingly, and I adore the time that I read it. And it has lots of implications as to how we present ourselves and how we think we know people and we do not. So that would be my choice, but it's not a great choice. And the reason being that for me not to pick a cookbook is stupid. So if I had more than 2 seconds to choose what that would be and not go with my gut, but go with what I probably really needed to do, it would be this ridiculous cookbook. It's the it's like the New American Family Cookbook, and I think it came out in like the 1960s. And there was a copy that I cooked from when I was young that my grandmother gave to my mom, and she she inscribed it with "Cook well or go to hell," and I have made many things in there, and have also been just fascinated with some of the recipes that have since died, that we don't cook with Jell-O as much anymore. We don't make this monstrosity called skillet surprise that was like Spam and canned peaches and ketchup and relish. But it's got all of these great memories, and my mom still has her copy of it. Like, I can't have it. But I actually went on Amazon and bought another copy of it to hold me over. And I tried to find the oldest copy of it that I possibly could, so it felt like it was as dog-eared and worn and battered as the one that I cooked from when I was little.
Wow. I'm torn here, Dave, on which direction to go, because on the one hand, that last bit was about cooking and food, and please believe we got those questions. But then there was that presidential talk. So I'm gonna go here. Tomorrow you're going to be invited to give a lecture at the White House because the president wants your insight and wisdom.
Current President Obama.
That's correct.
Wants my insight.
Barack Hussein Obama.
Okay.
Talk about what you'll talk about.
Shit. I think I would talk about the importance of being of service to other folks. That's my current kick, and I've been dying to do this thing, and I'm going to challenge both of you guys to do it too. Maybe you've done it already, and I'm just slow to the game. But I want to work my way back in my life through jobs, through school, through you name it, as far as I can go, and produce my gratitude list, my list of all the people that have gotten me to where I am and have given me all sorts of things that I'm only now able to see. And it's kind of presumptuous because I will be, I can't ever remember my fucking age. I'll be 35 this year. My best friend Kate is here with me, and she just nodded. She's here to make sure that my bullshit meter is not going up too hard or too strong. So she said, yes, you will be 35. No bullshit. So I want to go back as far as I can. And again, it's kind of ridiculous for a 35-year-old to look back and kind of figure out how to be thankful for all the things that she was given. But I think we need to do it because a lot of times when we're in the grind and we're muddling through whatever we're trying to do, we lose sight of the fact that we are a composite of all the things that were given to us. We are one star in a bright constellation, and all those stars shining together are, that they're what are lighting up the sky. And I think I would want to talk to people about that, about how they can kind of figure out all the gifts that they were given and how they can be of service to others, either intentionally or unintentionally.
I don't think that's ridiculous at all. I think that's beautiful.
I'm about it.
And that leads well into my next question, which is, who has been the most important person in your life? And can you tell me about him or her?
I can't possibly have one. My parents are pretty fucking awesome. And I think that I was pretty lucky to have both of them contributing to who I am. Just growing up in a house where you were able to say all sorts of stupid things and be silly and be ridiculous and really work things out for yourself in a way that made you brave and made you want to go out and kind of seek out the things that you wanted for yourself in your life. I think that was probably the greatest gift that they gave both my sister and I, and a lot of it came from the fact that both of them are unapologetically who they are. So when my sister and I got to high school, and high school is a time where a lot of people are trying to figure out who they are, and they're trying to do it in the context of other people telling them who they should be. Neither of us really gave a shit. which was awesome. And in fact, I had a friend years and years later, like I was in college and she and I were hanging out, and she was like, the one thing I really liked about you, Angela, in high school was that you did not care what other people thought. And it didn't even dawn on me that you know, that was kind of how I was living my life. But yeah, that was absolutely what it was. I mean, and it wasn't even like we were actively trying to not give a shit. Like that was just how we were programmed to be, which was fantastic. And I'm so thankful of it. In fact, I have some times now where I don't have a problem with empathy, but sometimes I have a problem with like people making a big deal about nothing. Like it's not, I just don't understand it. And it was the way that I was raised. And actually that goes back to a whole line of people, but another person that's super important to me is my mom's mom, my grandmother. She and I are thick as thieves. In fact, she lives in Arizona, so she's a bestie of mine beyond being my grandmother. And that's where that came from, where my mom got it. Like, because my grandmother just does not give a shit. Like, she sees it. She sees what's going, and she has always been that way. Like, you know how some people, their grandparents get that way over time? They're like, I've lived enough and now I don't give a shit. No, she has always been that way. She's like, I'm doing me, you do you, and we'll be good. And that's the way it's always been. So, yeah.
I love it. And that's why I'm going to totally switch bases here and ask you this question. We're inching toward the food questions. What kitchen gadget do you think should be in every classroom? And what classroom gadget could you find use for in the kitchen?
Okay, so I have really solid answers for both of those. That's actually an easy question. Kitchen gadget that should be in every classroom, I would say a very good knife, which sounds kind of scary with violence in the classroom, but I think that a handy paring knife can do all sorts of things. I was even thinking about that the other day. I was decorating my space in the office, and I needed an X-Acto knife, and my best friend and I were actually laughing about it because when we were in New York, when we would go to the one major art store to get all of our stuff, it was this kind of crazy place called Pearl Paint that was, like 7 floors? You had to walk up these steep flights, and I think in order to prevent loss of product, they made you buy everything on the floor that you were on. So if you were shopping for 3 or 4 studio art courses and you had lists of 20 to 30 different things that you had to buy for each of those classes, you had to be a master of organization, and nobody fucking was. Like, you do all your shopping, and then you would find out, okay, I forgot to buy something on floor 3. I've got to schlep all of this stuff down to this other floor and then buy like a 25-cent eraser because that's the way it went. So we were reflecting on the whole X-Acto thing because that was one of the difficult purchases. I think you had to be, it must have been 21 because we were already 18 when we were taking these classes. You had to be 21 years old or have somebody that was over 21 buy you an X-Acto knife or spray paint. Like, they locked it down. And I always thought it was fucking weird that you could just go to like Kmart in Times Square and buy like a butcher knife. And that was no problem. Like, I don't know what they thought people were going to do with those X-Acto knives, but it's always handy to have a good sharp knife and know how to use it regardless, whether it be for art or for cooking or you name it. For out camping in the wilderness, Dave, I'm sure when you're out fishing, that's super important. And then classroom gadget that needs to be in the kitchen. I'll just keep this one brief. I think an iPad is a fabulous thing. And I think that the person that has invented, because I'm sure it's already been invented, the iPad cover for the kitchen that works similarly to like those cookbook protectors. That's a big deal. So I cook with an iPad in the kitchen regularly.
My favorite thing about your response is that you started off with knife, and you you just left the tension there of like, I don't know about you, Ben, but my mind went to like, what is a teacher doing with a knife? And you didn't
all sorts of
address
positive
that.
things.
You just went to
I just assumed you had super cool craft assignments.
Yeah.
I think it's really disturbing that we live in a time where, people hear knife in a classroom and they think all sorts of horrible things. Because there was a time when knife in a classroom was a standard. I mean, you went to like your home ec class, and this was like part of you being able to graduate was knowing how to use a knife. I mean, no big deal. And it shouldn't be any big deal, but that's where we're at now.
Yeah. Speaking of how times change and everything, what has been so far the happiest moment of your life?
I don't know. The answer that pops in my head, and I think that these kinds of things reveal themselves over time. So like I could tell you what I think is the happiest right now, but 10 years from now, I'll remember something else that was even more incredible than that. But okay, so you guys don't know this. I was about to say this as if like everybody in the universe knows this, but my wedding number 2 was probably one of the happiest moments in my entire life. And I got married, same guy, but got married 3 times. And all 3 weddings were pretty comical and fantastic. But wedding number 2, just to keep this brief because I only have 1 minute, was the wedding in which many people who are no longer alive, including my mother-in-law, that was really our last hurrah with all of them. And we didn't know it then. I mean, we kind of knew with my mother-in-law, she had pancreatic cancer. And it was remarkable when they diagnosed her with stage 4 cancer, they said, you have 2 months to live. And she said, fuck you. And she went on to live 8 more months because she had to go to her daughter's wedding, her son's wedding, and play with her granddaughter. And that took 8 months to do it. And she did all 8. And then she said, peace out.
That's incredible.
So looking back, that whole time, and it was tough. That wedding number 2 was really, really hard because my husband and I had been married for a whole year at that point. And it was a hot mess to plan a wedding when you're already married and you're like, what are we doing this for? Like we had a great first wedding. It was really meaningful to us in Central Park. And it was fucking ridiculous, which is everything that we do in our life, to include homeless people that were there at the wedding. He's literally about to say, I do. And a guy yells from across the Harlem mirror, pineapple, inexplicably. And you can see in the video that my best friend was taking of it, my husband mouths, what the fuck? And then he says, I do, because it was a perfect day. So wedding 2, at the time planning it, we were like, why are we doing this again? And then now looking back, we know exactly why we had to do it again, because we had to celebrate with a whole lot of people that we were not going to get to celebrate with too much more, or at least on this earth.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Again, I'll work to transition us here. But I did scour your Twitter feed today for anything to talk about. When I landed here, it's South by Southwest EDU. So talk to me about talk to me about whatever you want. I want to know about kind of the vibe you got from there. So I imagine this world full of hipster geniuses breaking out new ways of doing education I've never even dreamed of. Am I better off just holding on to that fake fantasy because the reality was a letdown, or should I actually be sad that it was just that good and I missed out? What were your impressions?
Do you this real talk? Do you kind of know the answer to this question already?
I have no clue.
Okay, what's your guess?
My guess is that you,
based on your Twitter searches and like murmurings and all sorts of things.
my guess would be that you guys loved your panel session and that the rest of it was kind of a letdown, but that's, for whatever reason, that's just my hunch because that's how these things go.
So when we go to conferences, typically, especially for ed tech, when we go into sessions, we kind of have to play this game where we're figuring out how much we have to translate. Is it going to be that they're going to be speaking, academic French, but we speak basic French, or are they going to be speaking Swahili and we haven't learned any Swahili before? So using that metaphor, we showed up and they were speaking Swahili and we had to learn Swahili really quickly for a lot of the sessions that we were doing. So we ended up finding out, and all of us within our particular group, it was a panel talking about the exploratory installation, better known as the Technology Test Kitchen. We were all from higher ed institutions, and we did not know that there had been a change to the board of South by EDU that year where they had, I don't know if people had been removed, but a lot of the higher ed folks had left and they were replaced by K-12 teachers. And they'd already had a strong contingency of K-12 teachers. So it was primarily K-12. So the conference skewed heavily K-12, which meant that every session that we went into, it was like Will Ferrell in Zoolander when he was like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like we didn't know whether we were supposed to be there or not. And it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, the keynotes were incredible. Temple Grandin, Jay McGonnell doing a futurist experiment within there. What if Bitcoin was, or the concept of Bitcoin was used for the transfer of knowledge, and that people could teach other people in the same way that we exchange Bitcoin. There were a lot of gems, and actually folks from the Stanford D School were there doing a day-long design thinking summit, which was fantastic. So I don't want to make it seem like I didn't gain a lot. I received a whole lot, but when you show up at a conference and the conference culture is to drink in as much as you can, and sort of get in that rhythm of, I'm going to just take it all in and then unpack it later. And you feel like every session that you're sitting in, you're not really hitting your stride or your momentum. It's very, very hard, especially at a time where we only have so much money to go to conferences and participate in these exchanges. And I mean, honestly, the best takeaway for me was having the ability to work with Frank Tomsick and Ann Musgrove and Jess Knott and figure out some sort of bigger future plans for the Technology Test Kitchen. We had a lot of great conversations about what then became the Innovation Lab. So just having those big old brains around to talk to face, which is kind of crazy for somebody that makes their hay off of digital, but having them there for the analog, just, having a convo and sharing a drink, that was really important. And, we got a bucket of donuts at Voodoo Donuts that was real suspect, and we shipped it to Felice Banner from Austin, Texas to upstate New York. So that happened too.
Thank you for sharing that. We're going to come back to that too, Dave. It's a lot there.
Heck yeah. So you mentioned some pretty good people there. If you could interview anyone from your life, living or dead, but not a celebrity, who would it be and why?
My brain immediately goes to dead because I feel like there's a lot of stories that I want to unpack. Okay, this is kind of crazy, but I think I would interview my great grandmother on my mom's side. So it's my grandmother that I spoke about before, her mom. When she passed away when I was, I want to say 9, I have it's banana cakes. I have all 4 of my grandparents still alive. I knew many of my great grandparents, and most of them, I had a good rapport with. And my my great grandmother, Vovoeni, she and I did not get along. And she and I spent quite a bit of time together. And it was really interesting because she loved my mother like she was her daughter, like she was her, I think she had 6 kids. So it was like, she loved my mom like she was her 7th kid, which was remarkable. And I didn't get it. I mean, there was a lot of conflict and turmoil over that, where I think she really wanted to like me. She loved me, but I think she really wanted to like me, but she was just not having it. And, I was a precocious kid, and, she would have liked if I was just quiet. Which is interesting. I think part of it too is that she was tired of kids. I mean, she'd had plenty of kids in her life and had done that and was not really interested in that. And also because I was taking away attention that my mom gave her, because my mom was giving me attention. So it was kind of complicated, but that's me looking back on it. And I think that there was more to that story. And I would really want to talk to her about that and kind of figure out what our relationship might have been had she lived longer and known me as an adult, because I think we would have been great, great friends. And the other thing I would want to talk to her about is the relationship that she had with my mom, because I told my mom this, that all the trouble that I had with Vovoeni back in the day, it was kind of erased when the relationship with my grandmother, my mom's mom, truly came to fruition. And I realized it was something more than a grandmother-granddaughter type of relationship, that we were just dear, dear friends. I mean, we get together and we drink wine and eat cheese and just laugh so hard. And I'm like, this is my soulmate here. This is my bud, when you're like, it's beyond the typical titles and things like that. So I told my mom, I was like, I totally get it. I get it. I get what you had with Vovoeni, because I have it. I have it with my grandmother and with your mom. And my mom was pretty gobsmacked by that. She was pretty happy that all that came full circle. So I'd want to interview Vovoeni and get a little more info on maybe why we're all fucking crazy. And we're all crazy in the same way, and we're happy about it.
I'm about that. I'm ready. Well, I think it's time to delve into a couple of food questions. And this one I think maybe connects to the last one some ways in terms of thinking of those connections, some stickier maybe than others. But when we were in New Orleans, I learned and relearned actually a lot about the cultural and historical connections between the city and its food, food, language, culture. I don't know. They're intertwined powerfully. They connect. So my question is this: what is your favorite city, region, or place because of the whole interplay of the food and the culture or the geography, etc., and why?
I don't have one. I don't have one. There's just too many. There's just too many places. I think that I'm more interested in your question, and the reason is because I have been struggling, and we talked about this with finding a PhD program, and again, I only have a minute to do all of this, so I'm going to try to keep it brief. But basically, a series of many events kind of came full circle, and I realized that the home for me is probably going to be second language acquisition for teaching as my home. They're doing a whole lot with technology, and I've been doing quite a bit with emerging technology for second language acquisition for a long time now. And I had this kind of crazy moment where I said, okay, well, what if there was a way that I could combine my love of digital storytelling and the technology with the storytelling piece that comes with food blogging, which was all based on my reverence and love for food memories, both mine and ones that other people had. And also the work that I had done in the past to try to create this interactive thing that would be a culinary history of Brazil. So while that would not be my easiest path, I want to finally get my Portuguese up to snuff, which, I mean, I could probably place out of French or Italian with less work, but that's not what I want to do. As it is in life, all good things, they're not necessarily the easiest path that you could take, and kind of combine all of these things. And the big piece that I want to dig into is what you asked about in the question, Ben, when you said you were in New Orleans and you felt like all of the food and the art and the culture and the language, I mean, all of it was woven together. And when we talk about the ACTFL World Readiness Standards, which are the standards by which all world language teachers use to teach the language, one of the World Readiness Standards is culture, and they talk about big C culture and little C culture, and how some of it is latent and present, and some of it is interwoven, but all of it is tied to language. And when language dies, culture dies. So I want to poke more at that. I have kind of an interesting ethnic background in that my mom is half Brazilian and half Sicilian, and my dad is African American. So when I think about geographic locations and the food memories that are tied to them, just with my own personal ethnic makeup, there are so many locations that have great meaning to me. In fact, I've written about them quite a bit. And it would be a shame for me to pick just one. But and I know I've gone longer than a minute, but I'll give you one thing. The town that my family is from, Belém do Pará. So if you look at a map of South America, the equator runs right around the top of Brazil, and where the Amazon River meets the Atlantic Ocean, there is a little town right there on the equator, and that's where my fam is from. Everybody in Brazil makes the Brazilian national dish, feijoada, and it's actually feijoada do completa, so it's like all of the accoutrement with the dish. It's basically black beans, meat, and you serve it with white rice, and then you serve it with collard greens and cut oranges. But because my folks are from the north, where you can get manioc, the manioc root, and you can toast it so it's no longer poisonous and it won't kill you, which many of the food that is from the region where my family is from in Brazil, that shit will kill you if you don't know how to cook it correctly. The manioc root, they toast it and they grind it up almost like a powder, and you cook it with, it's kind of nuts, butter and chopped onions, and sometimes my family does chop bacon. Well, we used to back in the day, but my mom and my sister don't eat meat, so we don't do it with bacon anymore. And you serve that on top of the beans, and the fact that that's present has a lot to do with the place, because if you go to other regions of Brazil, they don't put that stuff on top of the beans. But if you had to distill me down in a dish and in a location, I think that'd probably be the closest thing. And I'm happy to share that recipe with you guys if you would like it.
That sounds delicious.
I think we need that in the show notes.
Yes. Man, I want to talk more about that sometime. I've been to São Paulo for like a week.
Oh, you've been to the south. You got to go to the north now.
Yeah. Be interesting to compare. Okay. So, Angela, what what do you think it is that makes you, Ben, and I such good friends?
Oh, shit. I love that question so much. I think it's that all three of us. I don't want to use this cliched phrase, but I'm going to use it because it's kind of perfect. We all three of us live in a place of yes, and we support each other in living in a place of yes when we're together. So, and I was actually reflecting on this podcast with Kate earlier today, just how somebody comes up with a suggestion, and it's like, yeah, let's do it. How are we going to do it? We're going to do it together. It's not going to be just one person kind of figuring out how to do this stuff. We're going to do it collaboratively, and we're going to make it happen. And there's nothing more fulfilling than knowing that you can share your crazy ideas, and you're around people that can help you bring them to fruition. If but just to say, hey, this is going to happen, but it's going to take time. And maybe the answer is waiting a little bit, but it's not a no. It's just a, hey, let's gather all the pieces together that we need in order to make it happen. I think that's a big part of it. We're also just super fucking cool.
Co-sign that. All right. Well, let me dig in a little bit more here. This one may not be as deep, but it's back on the food. And so I saw Bobby Flay on ESPN of all places yesterday. And
I saw it too.
And so maybe you saw this, or maybe he was on a whole bunch of shows. They call it a car wash when all the guys and gals go through there for a whole day and do all their different shows. But the guys interviewing him yesterday asked him what the next kale is going to be. And he said, kale isn't going away. Kale's not going anywhere. And that he sees mustard greens kind of starting to trend, or he could see them trending. So what food in your world is trending up? Or is there something you've been really into lately? Or is there something you see trending?
I love these food trends because they have a lot to do with what's going on in our country at any given time. So this is kind of a sad example, but right around 9/11, and I was actually in New York City. Both Kate and I were in New York City for 9/11. But right around that time, all of the restaurants in the city, and there's great food. Just, all of this, these burgeoning, different types of restaurants, just about anything you could possibly imagine. It could be started in New York. But there was this movement back to everybody's roots, and it was the upsurgence of comfort food at that time. So when people started really caring about mac and cheese again, and it took a couple of years, and then you had these places that, had tons of mac and cheese, or even braised short ribs, to the point that now it is ridiculously expensive to get short ribs. I mean, that was a cheap cut. I even remember growing up, like my dad would make this cabbage borscht with short ribs, and the cost of making this peasant soup, which we still love and we adore eating, is way more expensive. And then the other one that really stuck out in my mind, it was probably, let me think about this, maybe like 4 years ago, cauliflower. Like, just became this crazy thing, and not just eating plain old cauliflower, but like grinding it up and turning it into rice pilaf, or like making it into a pizza crust, and doing all of this stuff
out of it. Yeah.
Literally all of these crazy things. And it was more of a health kick. I mean, people wanted to eat paleo, and they wanted to get away from, eating as many carbs, so they were using cauliflower as a replacement for carbs, and I thought that was real strange. But there was one particular recipe that I liked just because it tasted good, and that's really my whole philosophy. I'm not scrupulous about what people eat. I just don't like it when people are scrupulous about what they eat. I don't like it when that is very evident. So I like mac and cheese recipe that uses cauliflower as the base. You basically boil it and you make a cream sauce out of cauliflower, which is pretty epic and kind of weaves together those two little anecdotes that I just gave you, cauliflower mac and cheese. But in terms of things that ding, 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 things that I'm excited about right now, I take my cues from the region that I'm in. So I am happy to be back in not only in the desert where I can get all sorts of like chiltepin peppers and like heirloom beans. My favorite bean place is, they're actually in California, but they're called Rancho Gordo. And they have these old world beans that have been around for thousands of years and they preserve the vines, but you can get the beans for pretty cheap and they're phenomenal. But I also like just being near produce that comes from like Cali and from good growing locations. So we have a grocery store called Sprouts that has whole food-esque types of things, but cheap. And I go there and I'll get like fruit that I have never heard of or seen before in my life. Like I love just being fearless in the kitchen, finding ingredients and, you know, and just hitting them hard. So last summer, and I'm excited that they're not back in season, I can get, you know, fresh passion fruit. I can get Kiwano melons that look like alien entities. I mean, all sorts of wackadoo stuff, and they have it all. And then I occasionally go to my Asian market that has all of that stuff too, and far beyond Asian and South Asian stuff. They'll have different items from South America and from the Middle East, and just going in there and experimenting. That's really it. So my food trend is try fucking everything.
Boom.
I love it.
That's great. So for you, is there any particular thing or set of things that you wish men, generally or specifically, knew or did or had orientations toward with respect to either working with yourself specifically or maybe women generally? And I don't know if it's fair to ask you to speak on behalf of all women, but basically, you know, this brings out of a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, starting around just kind of how we interact and my curiosity and how I want to approach it. And I thought, well, maybe a good idea is to actually ask a question. And so the question is, how do we, and I'm saying is men, maybe get better around working with women? Is that even a question? Maybe it's just make me better. And so I just wanted to open some space to ask a nebulous gender related question and just see what you do with it.
So I don't think that I have the right to speak for all women or all men. I can speak for the things that I've seen and that I know, and I can speak for my own reality. And Ben, you and I, and with a couple of other people, we had some actually really kind of interesting conversations about this. And actually, I struggle with this because some of my dear friends are scholars within this realm. Dr. Pat Grzanka, just intersectionality scholar, and can speak far better on this than I can. So, and I'll borrow a phrase from my buddy Janet Smith too, that said that the enemy of great is good. So for me to speak on this and do my best would not be doing the richness of this topic justice. But I will tell you where I'm at with this right now, because it's kind of a big thing for me in my mind.
And I feel like that's fair. And in the parlance of this back and forth, I'm with you and appreciate that. So thank you for helping guide us as we crafted that question.
Yeah. So going back to my childhood and the way that my sister and I were raised, race was never an issue, which is very, very strange to hear both my sister and I talk about being biracial, triracial. I think we're all technically multiracial. I laugh at it because I'm a minority by the public definition, but like when we look at the genetic makeup of my husband, I mean, he's like 6 different ethnic groups, but he's categorized as white male as opposed to me. It's just standardized tests were real fun, guys. let me just break that down. My only forays in race were trying to figure out what the hell box I was supposed to, or bubble I was supposed to check when they said, if you can check off, you can't check off Caucasian because you have African American blood, but you can't check off African American because you can't have any South American blood. But Angela, you fundamentally have a problem with checking off Hispanic because your people from Brazil were not conquered by Spain. So you're not technically Hispanic. So what do you circle? Especially when there was a time when there was no other bubble. It was real confusing and difficult. But that was kind of the end of the difficulty for me because of the way that our parents raised us, to the point that we were just individuals. I grew up in a post-racial household, in a society that, or in a world that is by and large not even close to being post-racial. So it was hard for me to understand that folks that were multiracial were having really tough times, knowing that I didn't have that, and it was a gift that my parents gave me. So I feel a debt. I am indebted to all of the people that have struggled and have not had the experience that I've had, knowing that rather than try to right the wrongs, it's almost about how do we get to that next step. So rather than getting into the trenches and trying to beat up all of the people that have fucked us over, how do we say, what is our next chapter going to be? How are we going to define ourselves? How are we going to think of ourselves as a truly post-racial society? And that's where I'm at with the whole gender issue. So when you ask me, what can men do to be better in terms of being good to women and working with women, and the many possible things that you could ask or you could fill in the blanks for. My question is, how can we as men and women together create a post-gender society where gender is not culturally relevant to who we are?
Wow.
Well, I'm not going to treat that as rhetorical. I'm just going to treat that as
it's a call to action.
The next a future conversation, and maybe that's one. Yeah. Forgive me for yawning. Where I can see us. It's bad timing. Where I can see us inviting maybe some folks to the table and just getting some perspectives. I will leave you with this. I had a really interesting conversation with my best friend tonight, and we were talking, and I couldn't exactly remember what the context for this was, but the last time he and I talked, there was something in my life that I was disquieted. I was upset, and it was about human communication and me wanting to listen more. And essentially tonight, I kind of heard him say something to the effect of, like, you're a verbal processor. You've always been a verbal processor. You communicate that. You communicate your thinking verbally. And maybe you should just listen more. Or essentially to the point that, not just saying, oh, maybe you should shut up, but it was like, you do this thing where you try to recreate someone's words, and it might be more helpful to distill them. And it was positive kind of feedback that Greg's probably not listening here, but I probably didn't do justice to those. But I think about, you asked me this question, in the very initial thing, right? I said, I get quiet and I like to listen. You said, is that true to who you are? And I think maybe no. But I also think like the boundaries of my own understanding, I feel like sometimes get tapped out when it's just me in my own head and my narratives. And so maybe it's a challenge and a call to really listen to what other people are trying to say. And so I feel like that would be, this is a question, and maybe what you just said could springboard us into another conversation in the future.
Well, and before you go, I just wanted to add, I wonder if the nature of our jobs and what we do force us to listen less and to speak more. And maybe that's why we have this connection over this podcast, is because we're able to actually unpack some things and listen to each other in a really earnest and productive way. So yeah, I would love to have that larger conversation with, again, people that are much smarter than I am.
Well, let's get in there and figure out some names and start plotting that scheme. Yeah.
So, Angela, on the condition that, well, actually, I'm going to swap this question out, because you mentioned that you and Katie you guys were in New York during 9/11. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Yeah.
The reason I'm chuckling is I literally had this conversation with her the other day. She was recounting her experience visiting the 9/11 memorial and going to is it the 9/11 museum? Is that the official name of the memorial? The official name for it. So they have a lot of profound but emotionally charged things there, to the point that you spend 5 hours and then you probably need another 5 days to sort of recoup from the weight of what you've received. So I asked her, when she was in the museum, did she feel like she was reliving that experience of being there that day? And she said, oh yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of stuff. Oh God. It's really messy, I think, is the best way to describe what it feels like when I sort of, and I try to talk through it, because I can't unpack some of the ideas that are there. I also, it's a collective history that is being informed by having conversations with other people. So I actually, it's not that I like talking about it, but I think it's important to talk about it. So, I was at Fordham. I remember that day I'd gone to my first class. I think it was like an Italian class. And then Katie and I had this art history class with the teacher, who was ridiculous for a whole lot of other reasons. And it was kind of a funny class, because the students were all over the place. And Katie was an art history major. I knew a good deal about art, but not as much as her. And we really knew what we were doing in that particular class, but there were a lot of jokers in there. So she and I, it was kind of a happy bonding time for us as best friends. And she didn't have a class before that art history class. So she was in our dorm room still with our other roommate, and watched on the news. She watched the 2 planes hit the Twin Towers, and did not understand, and I'm recounting I'm just relaying, what she told me, but literally did not understand what she had just seen. Mm-hmm. None of that had hit. She had also heard that stuff was going on in Washington, D.C., where my family is. So she went to class, showed up to class and told me, Angela, I don't know what's going on, but there's some stuff going on in Washington, D.C. I heard that the mall is on fire, that something hit the White House. It's really complicated. And then, like, immediately after, before I had a second to process, our teacher shows up. And again, usually we're kind of joking around, like, oh, what ridiculous bullshit are we going to do today? And she was, pretty serious and was like, I don't know what's going on. We just kind of have to wait and see what's happening. But we'll just have class and then we'll see. So we actually had that full class and then went back to our dorm. And I remember walking back to the dorm and there were, I don't know, like hundreds of people scattered around campus trying to call people on cell phones, and nobody's cell reception worked. And we didn't really realize that, we thought it was a bunch of people calling, but, in later times, we realized that the major cell phone repeaters in the city were on top of the World Trade Center and they'd been taken out. So we had no way to talk to anybody. So spent the rest of the day trying to figure out where everybody was and take inventory. And I remember the biggest thing for me was figuring out if my family was okay, because before I knew what was truly going on in New York, I just knew that stuff had gone down in Washington, D.C. And my family lives in Arlington. They actually live so close to the Pentagon that my mom looked out the window and saw the plane flying in that hit the Pentagon. And she said, that's so crazy. This plane is so low. I can actually see the numbers on the side of the plane. The plane shouldn't be flying that low. And when the plane hit the Pentagon, it rattled the windows of my parents' house. So it took some time to figure out what was up. We actually had to use AOL Instant Messenger in order to get in touch with my family. And my mom, who loves technology, was not down with Instant Messenger. And the first thing that she said to me was, "Hey, are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm okay. Are you okay?" And she said, "Yes." And then she immediately responded with, I hate this shit," which I thought was fantastic and real in that moment. But the biggest thing for us that entire day was waiting for our fourth roommate to get home, because she worked downtown and she had luckily gotten out of Dodge pretty quickly, but then they shut the subways down. So she had to walk from 42nd Street in Manhattan, something to the tune of like 300 blocks. And had been walking barefoot for the last, I want to say, 50 or so blocks. And we didn't see her because all of this happened early in the morning. It was probably, like 9 o'clock or so?
It was earlier than that.
Or even earlier than 9. We didn't see her till probably about 9 p.m. at night. And we're sort of holding a vigil because we didn't really understand what was going on. That's one of the pieces that I've heard from so many folks, is they had that same similar experience, that they had this, loved one. My husband, in fact, his mom, she had to do that same walk from town back home. And we were just in Queens visiting. I'm so sorry, this is like way more than 1 minute, but like how could you possibly answer this question in a minute? I mean,
totally.
We were driving through Queens, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, and we're in the car, Dennis passes this restaurant, and he's like, "This was the restaurant that my mom stopped at when she couldn't walk anymore." And she told the woman that owned the restaurant, "I don't have any money. I don't have a cell phone. I'm trying to get home. I just can't walk anymore." And the woman said, "Hey, you just sit down, put your feet up on this chair. I'm going to bring you some food. I'm going to bring you a drink, and you don't worry about it." And, we have all of these stories, these little moments of humanity where folks were trying to come together and help, and just people living with those feelings of the unknown, and, just struggling and grasping for meaning. And I have to say, I mean, all of these years later, I am still struggling for meaning, and I don't think I'll ever have any in my entire life. I mean, I even I can't get my mind around going to visit the memorial, and Kate said it was profound, and I believe her. I just don't know what steps I would have to take in order to be there and make sense of all of that. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's the best I could do.
No, that's Thank you for talking about that.
Yeah.
So we've got 4 more questions, and they're going to go in order. Of the first one is one that Ben asked about OLC Innovate. And so your response to him about the walkthrough exhibition space on innovation, and he asked, what is innovation to you?
So when Roland Moe was first planning the innovation installation, he made some light bulbs go off in my head when he talked about Julia Child, and how she changed the way that we learned to cook, changed the way that we explored the globe through cooking and through food. I mean, folks in the United States were pretty locked down. And actually, Julia Child's memoir is a fantastic read. It's a quick read too, but kind of learning what it meant to be an American in France, and just navigating those waters, and really being fearless in the face of a lot of folks that were like, well, a female American learning to cook and cook the French way, which had a lot of scholarship and. It was like the ivory tower that we see in higher ed now. Her getting in there and kind of infiltrating that. So I thought that was really neat that he included her in the mix, and she's certainly an educational hero for me. I think that innovation really is the ability to fearlessly ask questions, and ask lots of them, and collect people that can not only help you answer them, but can help you ask other questions. I mean, that's where it's born. It doesn't come from a product or it's not a spark. I mean, it's a slow burn. It takes a long time, and it's really that the question asking, and not being afraid to keep on digging deeper and deeper and deeper with those questions, because a lot of times we're told, all right, you got your answer, take it, and and that's that. And I mean, even in higher ed, that's the way it is a lot of times. It's just, here's your answer, that's it. Get out.
No, but you're so right. It's about the people, and it's about the questions. Go ahead. You were going to say something else too.
I was just going to talk about you, actually, when you said you were the kid in class that probably irritated a whole lot of teachers because you kept on asking why, and digging for more. And I don't know what the issue is. Is it that teachers aren't trained to be ready for kids that want to ask those questions? Or is it just so rare that they get kids that are asking as many questions as they are, that they're just not equipped for that experience? Or are we not even training our kids to be hungry and inquisitive and just tenacious with their inquiry, I don't know what it is. I don't know where we're failing.
I don't know either. And those are like really, really good questions. Yeah. But if your experience is like mine, you've had teachers who, on the other hand, have been really good at answering those questions honestly. So and
got mad when students didn't.
Yes.
And it's kind of nuts. The ones that stood out were the ones that taught me subjects that I didn't think I cared about until I took their class.
Totally. Okay, so that leads perfectly into this next question, which is, was there a teacher or teachers who had a particularly strong influence on your life? And can you tell us about them?
There were quite a few. I feel like I'm going to do a ton of them grave injustice, and that's why I need to make my gratitude list so that I can kind of work my way back and make sure that I'm calling them all out. But she was Miss Mellinson. She's now Dr. Mellinson, but she taught me European history, and I am embarrassed to say that history does not come alive for me like many other things. I'm a good writer. I'm a good test taker. And I took many AP history exams that I got very good scores on. And I don't know a fucking thing about history, but I can craft a tale quite well. But that European history course that she taught, my God, what a revelation. Just having somebody that was able to really make the content come alive in ways that I didn't think were possible, so that to the point that it would be impossible for anybody to be in the class and not get it, because she was working so hard to personalize the curriculum and really just tell us stories that were resounding and highlight the important things, like the ramifications of things happening, as opposed to remembering a date that you had to fill in on a multiple choice bubble. But also the other thing that she did was that she we had a contract, if you will, within the class. Like, she would go through our tests, and they were complicated. I mean, they did have some multiple choice pieces, but most of the work in the course, they were actual essays that we had to we had to complete, and she would go through them and give this rich, detailed feedback on the essays. And her whole deal was that she would get our tests back to us within 24 hours, which was banana cakes, that she gave us all of that feedback. But she said, in return, I expect that your assignments are going to be in on time. And that was the first time that I had ever heard somebody kind of couch it in those terms of, you don't have to turn your stuff in because I'm the teacher and I say so. You're going to turn your stuff in on time because I respect you enough to give you feedback in return. And we're part of a larger community where we all respect each other. And I'm going to do this for you, just in the same way that you're gonna do that as well. And I mean, to this day, whenever I teach, particularly when I teach online, I leave tons and tons and tons of feedback. And I struggle with it too, because, you want to make sure that you let the ideas of the students in your course, kind of flow. You don't want to be the one butting your head into all the discussions. You want them to dig in. But I struggle because I'm just like, I owe it to you. You're doing all of this great work. I owe it to you to leave robust feedback, and not even like, here's what you did right, here's what you did wrong. More of like, here's what you did, here are the ways that you can continue to expand on the good work that you have started. Yeah. I mean, that's the least that I and that we all can do for folks that are deigning to be in our classes and share their ideas with us.
Man, that's good stuff. Ben asked you earlier, what's your life philosophy in roughly a sentence or two?
No regrets. RAGRETS. I don't know. I think that on snarky days, it's like # sorry not sorry, but most of the time it's just, I mean, it's pretty simple. It's just be as respectful and kind to others as you possibly can. And it's going to be fucking hard sometimes, but just do it because it's important. That's it.
That is going to tweet. I'm going to listen to that life philosophy. That's good stuff. Okay, last question. I heard that when you work out, you listen. Oh no! You listen to music videos that you put together yourself for such events. Tell us more about this.
Oh God, I thought it wasn't going to come, but here's the question. Okay, so Dave, I told you this in a moment of honesty and trust. No, it's fine. Okay, so I really enjoy running outside. I'm not a fast runner. I'm a very slow runner, but that was one of the ways that I bonded with my mom. My mom has run her entire life, and we do long distance runs together. We actually, one of the more important things that we do together is a 50K walk for the National MS Society, where so my little sister, she just turned 29 a couple days ago, but when she turned 21, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and she had been an elite athlete her whole life. I remember when she was in middle school and high school. I used to travel around with her and all the other families of her AAU basketball team, and she was just fucking amazing. And she still is fucking amazing, but she went from being an elite athlete to kind of losing feeling in her toes, and then it spread up to her legs. And I actually went with her when she got her results that said that she had multiple sclerosis. It's been kind of a long journey watching her go through that. God, the original question was the music videos things, and now I'm talking about MS, but I got to talk about MS, so it'll be both. I promise. So, our family is very much when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, and then you spike it with Grey Goose, and you serve it to as many people as possible. So we started a fundraising team for the National MS Society, where we were going to do this 50K every year together. In order to walk in it, you have to raise $1,500 a person. Our family, over the years, I think it was like 8 or 9 years or so that we were hitting it hardcore. We did something like $120,000, I think, that we raised towards research for the National MS Society. Yeah, but and I didn't even tell you the best part. Guess what the name of our team is? MS is BS.
Oh, no way.
Which stands for Mind Strong is Body Strong. Silence, son, silence.
How do you respond to that? That is just gold.
You know, it's awesome. Yeah. So I spent a lot of time training with my mom and with my friends to do all of these different events, and it's been incredible. And I mean, the most incredible part is just watching my sister, because it's probably some of her worst times in terms of health, when she went from running to walking to a cane to a wheelchair and then back again.
Yeah.
And just horrible fights with the disease. She was out there on the news doing interviews in Washington, D.C., talking about her experience and saying, yeah, I've got to fight because we've all got to fight, and let's just do it. I mean, she was providing inspiration for other people when she probably didn't feel any for herself, with all of the pain and the struggle with that. So anyway, my little piece that I could do was to put in miles for her. And the first couple of years that I did it, I was in Phoenix, which it's very hot and it's hard to actually, walk or run outside to do the amount of miles that you need to do to train for a 50K. So we got a treadmill, which we put in our living room, and I would watch music videos, and I would pick a whole lot of songs that would get me hyphy and pumped and ready to go, but not all of them would have music videos. And for the ones that did not have, I don't even know if Kate knows this, but she's going to laugh at this because there's some history here. For the songs that didn't have music videos to them, I would find old Bob Fosse clips and then match up the dance patterns with the music, so I could watch Bob Fosse to like modern music. I would also do like Gene Kelly. I would do all sorts of like ridiculous stuff. I can share some of them with you. They're actually with YouTube, you know, because of the way that they do commercials, like it's okay for me to legitimately have these mashups and share them. So I could share a couple of them, but it's particularly funny. And Kate will remember this when we lived together, and Kate and I lived together for a very long time, both as roommates in college. And then after, when I moved back to New York and she moved back to New York, we lived together as roommates for, I think, 4 years after that. I had this sort of weird thing where if a commercial came on and it had particularly interesting music, I would just get up and dance. And like nobody else would do anything in the room. Like, in fact, sometimes I would do it and we'd have people over and Kate would be like, oh yeah, that's just something that she does. Like it was just something that happened. And I would always do like kind of weird Bob Fosse moves, like across. I guess the best example of it, if you want to see it, and I do have a mashup of this, is if you're familiar with the movie Sweet Charity, which is one of my favorite Bob Fosse movies. There's a part where Shirley MacLaine meets this Italian cinema legend, and he's just tickled pink by her being so green and just so silly and young. And he takes her to this really fancy, just super mod nightclub, and there's like a cheetah in a cage, and everybody has eyelashes like Twiggy, and it's just ridiculous. And there is a whole, I want to say, 3-minute dance sequence in the middle of the movie. And they're doing these moves that to this day, you'll see like people are still trying to steal and rip off. And I don't know what was in Bob Fosse's brain, but it's perfect for us to talk about it on the Innovation Labcast, because I mean, that's like innovation at its best. But I'm going to put this clip up, and then you were going to see exactly what kind of stupid dance moves I was doing when a random commercial for, like, you know, Velveeta cheese, or, you know, I don't think it was Velveeta, but you know, the music had to be good, but whatever it was, that's kind of how I was doing my moves.
I think that will probably be the music we use at the beginning of this particular episode.
And the question is, will it be the mashup of the music that I've put together, or will it be the actual music from the original movie? Because I think the music from the movie is pretty damn remarkable.
The music from the movie we can put in the episode, and then in the show notes we can put a link to the actual mashup.
Oh my God. See, this is what happens. You can't be stingy with anything, because, you know, the whole world will find out eventually what you do when you run on your treadmill.
Yes. No. I knew that you would have some amazing stories. I had no idea what I was in for, though. You've got some, and so many more stories that, I mean, we've just touched the surface of Angela Gunder's life. And so again, this will be to be continued, but I get the sense
I don't know, we just did an hour and a half.
No,
that's damn long.
no, this is the stuff I love. And have you guys ever explored StoryCorps stuff?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever done a StoryCorps interview?
I have not, and I really want to do a bunch with my grandmother.
Yeah,
because I'm on borrowed time right now, buddy. And
yeah.
I tell you what, I don't know if did I tell you the Ancestry.com story? I don't know if this is a good story for a later date, but basically, I'll save it for another day. We'll talk about Ancestry.com sometime too, which has all sorts of ramifications for race as well.
Yeah.
Being biracial and finding out what leaves Ancestry.com wants to show you. But I've actually been spending a whole lot of time with her, having her look through the public records and things like that, so that I can capture these stories of her grandparents and great grandparents while I have her with me, because you know, there's a lot there. What did Luis said that, you know, having the ability, Luis is the Emmy award-winning videographer and one of the most amazing people I know, literally finest people I know, that is in my office at the University of Arizona and helps produce a gorgeous, stunning video that really brings our online classes to life. So he and I have lots of conversation about all sorts of things. He actually would be a great person to bring into this podcast because you, Dave, would just pick his brain for hours and hours and hours. But we were talking about the conversations that I have with my grandma, and he said, yep, they're living treasures, I think he called them, which is kind of a strange term, but it's true. The time is so precious, and I'm fortunate to have it. So,
aren't we all? Yes, for sure. It is. It's all we have.
It's all we have. Well, I'm fortunate to have this time with you, with both of you guys.
Likewise, and I get the sense that you and Katie are really close, and I want to, like, if you guys haven't yet, I don't think you have, considered doing a StoryCorps interview with each other, because that would be just what I hear. I've done a StoryCorps interviews with my own grandma, and it totally blew my mind, and I need to do more of them, but I haven't yet. Also, with the closest friends in my life, done StoryCorps interviews, but it's fascinating, isn't it? Like even the people we're closest with, who we feel like we know so well, things that come up when we just sit down and intentionally ask questions like this are just mind-blowing, and
you're so wise,
super valuable.
See, when you asked the question at first, I was like, it would just be like unintelligible, like laughing and like weird phrases from back in the day, of which we have so many. Just me calling her Schifo all the time. Actually, she's not Schifo. Schifo is Italian for disgusting. And that's another story for another day. But yeah, no, I think that there's a lot that we would probably be able to unpack that we never actually discussed before, because that's the way it always is, you know?
Yep.
There's more to learn.
This has been good stuff.